So we've seen in the past couple of Mechagodzilla month videos that in general, Mechagodzilla would be fairly dominant if you threw him into the Pacific Rim universe, but also if you put him up against most Transformers, bar a couple. Now, just on that Transformers video, there were a couple of issues raised. For example, a few people didn't like that I put him up against the Power of the Primes Triptychon and not Wharf of Cybertron Triptychon. Now, I had considered doing that because I think that version of Triptychon is awesome and I absolutely love the design, but I just couldn't find a whole lot of data for him online, and because I've never actually played the game, I thought it was better just to avoid that. A few people also mentioned Devastator, and if you're a regular viewer, you might know that Devastator and Scorponok are a couple of my childhood favorites, so I deliberately kept them on the sidelines because I have plans for them further down the line. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, go check out the Goji Center's vid that popped up today, along similar lines to my own. They make these videos better than I ever could, so definitely go check that one out. I haven't checked it out personally because I don't really want to be influenced by other people's opinions, like even subconsciously, but once I'm done making this series, I'll definitely be watching it because those guys make absolutely superb content. Okay, make sure you beat that subscribe button if you like sci-fi, robot stuff, monster stuff, a couple of superheroes thrown in here and there, because I'm going to be covering the rest of Primal. I'm definitely going to be looking at the Godzilla Apple Plus series. GVK2 is in the pipeline. There's a Skull Island anime out at some point. And of course, next year, I do believe, is the 10-year anniversary of the release of Pacific Rim. So I'm going to plan to do something special for that. So, Mechagodzilla versus other Godzilla supervillains. Usual rules, one-on-one fights only, no help from external environmental factors. You got it? Let's first put him up against the one who is many, Monsterverse's version of Ghidorah. And yes, I know that it is the spirit of Ghidorah at the helm of Mechagodzilla in GVK, so in a weird way, it's kind of like Ghidorah fighting himself. But you know what? Let's not get too pedantic about our hypothetical monster battles here. Standing at 521 foot tall, Ghidorah is definitely taller than Mechagodzilla's 400 foot. And if you look here, it's logical to me that his height is measured to the top of his head, not to the tips of his wings. So you get a really good idea here of how much bigger this guy is. Weight-wise, we know that Ghidorah weighs 141 metric tons, which is almost a third heavier than what Godzilla was at that stage, although Godzilla did pack on some bulk for GVK, where he weighed slightly more than Ghidorah at 161,000 tons metric. But when you think about that, but wait, like he put on 61,000 tons in 5 years? Like what the f*** was he eating?
Must be all those hollow earth piranha fish, I reckon.
Actually, Dave's actually been helpful for once. What Dave means is that in Godzilla Dominion, it was said that because of all the Titans that were released, there was a scarcity of food for the new Titan population. That's what started Skilla, for example, getting aggressive and becoming highly territorial. Yum, yum, yum. But there was this crack in the ocean floor where this race of hive-minded piranhas came through from hollow earth. And as you probably know, fish like salmon are so packed with protein that grizzlies can grow to be bigger than, most London flats. Anyway, before I get too sidetracked, there's no official figure on Mechagodzilla's weight, but it's safe to assume, being made of steel and alloys, that he's going to be at least double Godzilla's weight, if not more. Oh, and as another annoying side thought, you have to wonder how heavy these creatures can get before they start to break into the surface of the earth and get bogged down like someone trying to wade through deep snow. So, height advantage to Ghidorah, weight advantage to Mechagodzilla. Height advantage means great reach, i.e. being able to strike your opponent without getting hit yourself. Weight advantage means more muscle mass, greater pushing power, harder to lift, topple, and get on the ground. Because remember, going to ground is bad. Very bad. So, just based on physical attributes and physical attributes alone, like removing flight, proton screams, hollow earth energy, gravity beams, just a big greased up wrestling match of pushing, biting, and clawing, I reckon Mechagodzilla wins it. Narrowly, but wins it all the same. Superior weight, combined with surprising speed and reflexes for such a large guy, plus his build materials mean that, in my opinion, he can get close to Ghidorah without taking any crippling damage. I mean, sure, Ghidorah's bites and claws are gonna rip, for sure, but if he can get through those, he can bulldoze Ghidorah. I mean, he'd probably topple him eventually, even though that large tail of Ghidorah's does do a great job of balancing him out. I think Mechagodzilla could go in hard and low, grabbing those legs and messing up his whole center of gravity. And once Ghidorah is on the ground, stoppy squish time, 3 heads go smush. But all that, of course, is ignoring the fact that these guys have got some pretty supremo special abilities. So let's go into some armaments and abilities, and let's do this. Buzzsaw claws versus talons. That's a tough one, but I reckon I'm gonna give it to the buzzsaw claws, as well as the grip and the crushing power he's got in his fingers. All these spinning blades on the inside of his fingers are gonna absolutely rip Ghidorah to pieces. And if you look at the fingertips, there's actually these kind of JCB sort of scoop edges. Now, whilst we do know that birds like hawk and eagles do have a hell of a lot of crushing power in their talons, Ghidorah's feet seem flatter, and even if he was to use them as weapons, he would need to be flying. Which throws up a bunch more questions. We saw that in the MG fight with Otachi, MG can't fly, although he can use his thrusters to blast himself forward, but that's not the same thing, is it? So Ghidorah does have the aerial advantage, so he should be able to soar above Mechagodzilla and blast him from above with his gravity beams, right? Yeah, but also no. Those wings are such a big target for a proton screen blast, and the membrane that they're made up of is always surprisingly thin when you consider the weight that they can lift. So I think that Mechagodzilla can nullify this advantage pretty easily. But here's an interesting one. Proton Scream versus Gravity Beams. Another tough one, right? At first I was going to say Proton Scream because it's so easily overwhelmed Godzilla's atomic breath in GVK. But the cold hard truth of the thing is that 3 heads equals 3 gravity beams. There's a couple of things here to keep in mind. Godzilla was at half strength at this point in GVK. His strength diminished by fighting Kong for the first 2/3 of the movie. And B, as well as growing in stature between 2019 and 2024, his atomic breath also got more powerful. Now make of those facts what you will, but it seems to me that these 2 attacks are fairly equal in terms of damage inflicted. Perhaps the Proton Scream edges it a little. But another thing to consider here is related to something we already discussed in the Pacific Rim video about how Mechagodzilla... Wait, I just gotta do this. I can't resist. How Mechagodzilla could potentially channel electricity and pulses around his body, like a Faraday cage, and perhaps be impervious to the Muto's EMP blast. Now, this is important because if it takes a hit from Ghidorah's gravity beams, could this energy be channeled and redirected into the ground and therefore completely nullified? It's an intriguing prospect, but I'm saying no, I don't think it does.
Plot twist!
Because these beams are not electricity. The best description I could find online was that they are beams of concentrated gravity particles fired out in the form of a beam. So Ghidorah channels the gravity particles in his throat and around his maws and then ignites them. It's an ability specific to the Ghidorah species, so it's an unknown as to whether Apex would have designed a way of countering it into Mechagodzilla. Scientist dog's gonna save the day! Hey, Mr. Scientist Dog, how you gonna solve climate change?
Bork. Bork.
Scientist dog's gonna save the day! I think that if MG takes a hit of gravity beams, it's hurting him, and it's hurting him a lot. But there's one thing that I think swings this fight completely in Ghidorah's direction. Now, this was highlighted by a subscriber whose comment, unfortunately, I can't find right now. But it deals with Ghidorah's ability to absorb energy, as we saw him siphon off Godzilla after latching onto his neck. So the question posed is what happens if Ghidorah absorbs the Hollow Earth energy that Mechagodzilla has been using to supercharge his blows and generally power himself? We know that Ghidorah can definitely do this from metal objects, as we saw Ghidorah do this after it absorbed electricity from a ground-based transformer. So imagine what it could blast out if it took even a fraction of what was coursing through Mechagodzilla's systems. Would that Hollow Earth energy amplify his gravity beams? It's very, very possible. Could it turn Ghidorah into some sort of nuclear Ghidorah or burning Ghidorah? I mean, regardless, as terrifying as Ghidorah already is, amped up with Hollow Earth energy, he jumps to a whole new level of terrifying. And in that situation, I can't see Mechagodzilla holding a candle to this guy. And so it's a win for Ghidorah, and the first loss so far for Mechagodzilla. So the question is, will this be the first loss of many for Mechagodzilla? Let me know who you want to see Mechagodzilla put up against next. Obviously, at some point, we're going to have to put him up against Destoroyah. Orga is a potential contender. Megaguirus might be one, but, you know, let me know what you want to see. Again, I do apologize if there's been less videos lately. It's just I've had to put my attentions on something else for a little while. I've had to work on this other project for a bit. Kind of dull, but I need the monies. Before I go, couple of shout-outs. Bumbleboy12 and Yuri's Life, just because, you know, they asked me nicely. And so you guys, thank you very much for watching, and I salute you. So until the next one, thank you very much for watching, and cheerio, bye!